The boredom of perfection. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where stars twinkled like scattered diamonds against the backdrop of infinite darkness, there existed an assassin whose reputation was unmatched, Vex Starlight. For centuries, he had danced through shadows, leaving behind a trail of eliminated targets that spanned across planets and dimensions alike. With each successful mission, he had honed his skills to perfection. However, perfection came at a price: boredom. Vex lounged in his sleek starship, the Eclipse, its metallic interior reflecting the cold light of distant suns. He stared at the holographic display flickering in front of him, showcasing yet another successful elimination, a high-ranking official from the Zentaur Empire who had crossed paths with the wrong people. Target eliminated, he transmitted to Handler, his AI companion whose synthesized voice crackled through his neural implant like static electricity. Payment has been transferred to your preferred account, Handler replied monotonously. With a sigh, Vex kicked a stray processor core across the ship's floor, watching it skitter away like an errant thought. You know what the problem is? No challenge anymore, he lamented. This marked his 10,000th consecutive successful elimination, a milestone that should have filled him with pride but instead left him feeling hollow inside. Perhaps you need a vacation, Handler suggested lightly. Vex snorted derisively at the idea. The last time I took a vacation, I accidentally overthrew 3 planetary governments and established a democracy run entirely by sentient houseplants. He recalled that chaotic week with a mix of amusement and regret. It had been fun until it wasn't. Still, Handler continued in its calm tone, your efficiency ratings are unprecedented. The board is quite pleased. The board, he scoffed at the mention of those shadowy figures who orchestrated contracts like grandmasters in an intergalactic chess game. They can be pleased all they want, I'm starting to think I need a real challenge, something unexpected. Careful what you wish for, Handler warned cryptically. As if on cue, Vex felt an unusual tingle in his neural implant, a notification alerting him to a new contract waiting in his queue. He settled into the pilot's seat and brought up the file with just a thought. The target's image materialized before him, an ordinary-looking human male in his early 40s with slightly disheveled brown hair and an unassuming t-shirt emblazoned with, "World's Okayest Dad." This is a joke, right? Vex muttered under his breath as he scrutinized the file further. What could possibly warrant my rates for eliminating a science teacher? Handler remained unfazed by his incredulity. The client was quite insistent. Vex leaned back in his chair with skepticism swirling in his mind like storm clouds gathering before rain. Tell me he has some hidden powers or secrets worth uncovering. None reported, Handler confirmed. Then why am I even here, he grumbled while setting course for Earth, a planet he had visited before but never enjoyed due to its overwhelming gravity and abundance of humans discussing their cryptocurrency investments. Upon arrival on Earth, Vex initiated preliminary surveillance on David Thompson, his target, and found himself immersed in an utterly mundane routine, waking up at 6:30 a.m., making breakfast for his daughter Luna, dropping her off at school, teaching uninterested teenagers about molecular bombs, grading papers late into the night, all while maintaining an air of normalcy that seemed almost surreal to someone like him. This is actually painful to watch, he complained to Handler after 3 days of observation. The contract remains active, Handler reminded him dryly. Vex rolled his eyes at the monotony unfolding before him through hidden cameras strategically placed around David's home and workplace. He felt like an artist tasked with painting only shades of gray when he longed for vibrant colors, a palette filled with chaos and excitement. Determined not to let this assignment defeat him or diminish his reputation as the galaxy's greatest assassin, he began plotting various methods for elimination, each more elaborate than the last, only to have them thwarted by sheer coincidence or absurdity. On day 4 of observation, when all seemed lost in mediocrity yet again, something unexpected happened. David Thompson packed a thermos from home instead of stopping for coffee on what should have been just another ordinary morning. Vex stared incredulously through his scope as this seemingly insignificant action sent ripples through his carefully laid plans like stones thrown into still water. Handler, he said slowly as realization dawned upon him that this target might be more than just another mark on his record. I think I'm going to need more than just my usual tricks. And thus began an unforeseen journey that would challenge everything he believed about life beyond assassination, the life lessons hidden within mundane existence waiting just around the corner from danger itself. Surveillance and frustration. The days dragged on as Vex Starlight continued his surveillance of David Thompson. Each morning, he would wake up in the Eclipse, a sleek starship designed for speed and stealth, only to find himself peering through the lenses of his high-tech equipment at the same mundane routine unfolding in front of him. The thrill of the hunt had been replaced by a sense of monotony that gnawed at him like a persistent itch he couldn't scratch. David Thompson, a middle school science teacher, lived in a modest house on the outskirts of a bustling city. His life revolved around his daughter, Luna, and the simple joys of fatherhood. Vex observed David preparing breakfast with an ease that belied the chaos of his own profession. He would flip pancakes while humming a tune, effortlessly juggling pots and pans as if he were conducting an orchestra rather than cooking. "This is actually painful to watch," Vex muttered to Handler, who remained ever present in his neural implant. "The most dangerous thing this man does is grade lab reports without safety goggles." "Your observations are noted, Agent Starlight," Handler replied, its voice devoid of emotion. "The contract remains active." Vex sighed heavily, leaning back in his chair. "I know it's active. But what am I supposed to do? This isn't exactly thrilling work. I could have taken a vacation instead." "Perhaps you should reconsider your approach," Handler suggested. "You have the option to withdraw from the contract if you find it unchallenging." "Withdraw? Never." Vex snapped, determination igniting within him. "This has become personal now. I'm not going to let this ordinary human best me. It's embarrassing." As the week progressed, Vex attempted various methods to eliminate David, each one more elaborate than the last, but all ended in failure. He set up a delayed reaction quantum poison in David's morning coffee, only to discover that David had opted for a thermos packed from home instead of stopping at the cafe as he usually did. "Coincidence," Vex grumbled, switching to Plan B, a microscopic killer drone disguised as a common housefly. He released it during one of David's classes, watching through its visual feed as it zeroed in on its target. Just as victory seemed imminent, disaster struck. One of David's students had brought in a Venus flytrap for a science project, and Vex's state-of-the-art drone was consumed alongside an unsuspecting housefly. "Please tell me my implants are malfunctioning and that didn't actually just happen," Vex said through gritted teeth. "All systems are functioning normally, Agent Starlight," Handler replied with infuriating calmness. Frustrated but undeterred, Vex switched to Plan C and then Plan D, each more ridiculous than the last, only to have them thwarted by sheer bad luck or absurd coincidences. A temporal displacement snare caught a squirrel instead of David when he bent down to tie his shoe. Gravity reversal technology was disrupted by Luna's science fair project on magnetism, and psychic suggestion waves bounced off David's "world's okayest dad" shirt like rubber balls. By the end of the week, Vex had depleted more resources than he had on his last 50 contracts combined, yet David Thompson remained obstinately alive and blissfully unaware of the chaos surrounding him. "This is impossible," Vex declared as he watched through his scope while David successfully navigated what should have been a lethal series of coincidences involving 3 runaway delivery drones and an improbably placed banana peel. "No one is this lucky." "Your frustration is noted," Handler said dryly. "Would you like to withdraw from the contract? It would be your first incomplete mission." Vex shook his head vehemently. "Withdraw? Never. This just got personal." He began unpacking his most expensive toys, the ones usually reserved for eliminating elder gods and cosmic horrors. "I don't care if I have to tear apart the fabric of reality itself. David Thompson is going to die, and I'm going to be the one who kills him." "As you wish," Handler replied without missing a beat. "Though might I suggest a more subtle approach?" Before Vex could respond with another sarcastic retort, he spotted David walking up his driveway carrying grocery bags. To his utter disbelief, David looked right at Vex's carefully concealed position and waved cheerfully. "Hey there. You've been watching the house all week, right? Look, if you're planning to kill me, you might as well come in for dinner first. Luna's making her special spaghetti and meatballs tonight. I always cook too much garlic bread anyway." Vex stared through his scope in disbelief. Had he just heard that correctly? In 10,000 successful eliminations, not once had any target ever invited him for dinner before. This was either an elaborate trap or an invitation he couldn't refuse. There was no other explanation that made sense. "Handler," he said slowly, still processing what had just happened. "Please tell me you heard that too." "Indeed," Handler confirmed with its usual calmness. "How would you like to proceed?" Vex felt a whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind as he weighed his options. On one hand, this could be an opportunity, a chance to figure out how this seemingly ordinary man had thwarted all attempts on his life thus far. On the other hand, it could very well be a trap designed to ensnare him. "I suppose it would be rude to refuse such a polite invitation," Vex finally said with resignation as he collapsed his scope. "And if he wants to save me the trouble of breaking in, well then." "Agent Starlight," Handler cautioned him, "this is highly irregular. This entire contract has been highly irregular." Vex shot back as he checked his various weapons one last time before heading toward the front door. As he approached David's home, laughter floated through the air, a warm sound that felt foreign in his line of work where silence often accompanied death. For just a moment, uncertainty crept into his heart. It was an emotion he hadn't experienced in centuries. He rang the doorbell and waited anxiously for what lay ahead, an encounter that would change everything he thought he knew about life beyond assassination and perhaps even about himself. When David opened the door with that same inviting smile from earlier, Vex felt something shift within him, a flicker of curiosity that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "Come in. Come in," David exclaimed warmly. "Hope you like garlic bread. I always tell Luna that 3 loaves is too much, but you know how kids are with their cooking experiments." Vex stepped inside cautiously while activating multiple toxin detectors running silently within him, each reporting back with identical results. No threats detected except for an overwhelming amount of garlic wafting from the kitchen. "Dad," Luna chimed from around the corner with pigtails bouncing cheerfully, "is this your assassin friend?" "Luna," David admonished playfully while rolling his eyes at her exuberance. "What have I said about using the A word in front of guests?" "Fine. Is this your professional elimination specialist friend?" she corrected herself with exaggerated seriousness. "Yes," Vex replied slowly while trying to process this unexpected situation unfolding before him. "Sorry," Luna said sheepishly before continuing excitedly, "I read about you. You're famous." "Famous?" Vex raised an eyebrow as they moved into the kitchen where chaos reigned supreme, every surface covered in sauce or garlic or both. "Yeah," Luna exclaimed enthusiastically while helping her dad set plates on the table. "You killed an emperor by making him laugh so hard he exploded." "Luna," David interjected again while trying not to laugh himself. "It was technically an implosion," Vex corrected her with amusement creeping into his voice despite himself. As they settled down for dinner amidst laughter and warmth, a stark contrast from everything he'd ever known, Vex couldn't shake off the feeling that perhaps this ordinary human father held secrets worth uncovering beyond mere survival instincts. Maybe there was something deeper hidden beneath those layers of garlic bread and spaghetti sauce waiting just for him to discover. An unexpected invitation. As Vex sat at the dining table, the aroma of garlic bread and simmering meatballs filled the air, creating an atmosphere that felt utterly foreign to him. He had spent centuries lurking in shadows, orchestrating chaos, and now here he was, seated at a table meant for family dinners, surrounded by warmth and laughter. It was surreal, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had stepped into an alternate reality. "Enjoying the meal?" David asked with a genuine smile as he served Vex a mountain of spaghetti that could easily qualify as a small planet. Luna beamed with pride as she watched her father serve the food. "It's different," Vex replied cautiously, trying to navigate this unexpected situation. "I've never had dinner with a target before." David chuckled, clearly unfazed by Vex's admission. "Well, it's not every day you get to share a meal with an assassin. I figured if you were going to kill me, you might as well have a decent last meal." Vex raised an eyebrow at David's nonchalance. "You're taking this remarkably well for someone who's been targeted for elimination." "Honestly? I think you're just here to spice up my life," David said with a wink. "I mean, how many people can say they had dinner with the galaxy's most feared assassin?" Luna chimed in excitedly, "Yeah. And you're famous. Dad told me all about how you made that Emperor laugh so hard he exploded." "Imploded," Vex corrected her automatically, unable to suppress a smirk at the absurdity of it all. "The laughing just covered up the sound of the microsingularity I planted in his crown." "See?" David said to Luna, grinning. "Educational." Vex took a bite of his spaghetti, still processing how this dinner had turned into an impromptu educational session about his life as an assassin. The flavors exploded in his mouth, rich tomato sauce mingling with spices, and for a fleeting moment, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: contentment. As they ate, David began to share stories from his life, tales of teaching misfit students and navigating the challenges of single parenthood. Vex listened intently, intrigued by David's passion for education and his unwavering dedication to Luna. "You know," David said between bites, "being a teacher isn't glamorous or exciting like your job must be. But it has its moments. Like when a student finally grasps a concept they've struggled with for weeks, it's incredibly rewarding." Vex couldn't help but admire the sincerity in David's voice. He had spent so long in a world where emotions were often weaponized or manipulated that hearing someone speak about joy and fulfillment was refreshing. "Do you ever miss it?" Vex asked unexpectedly. "Miss what?" David replied, looking puzzled. "The thrill of your work," Vex clarified. "The excitement of danger?" David paused for a moment, considering his response. "Not really. Sure, some days are tough. I mean, have you ever tried to explain molecular bonds to a room full of 15-year-olds? But I wouldn't trade my life for anything." He glanced at Luna with affection. "I get to watch her grow up and learn every day. That's worth more than any thrill." Vex felt something shift within him, a flicker of understanding that had eluded him throughout his career as an assassin. He had always chased excitement and danger, believing them to be the essence of life itself. Yet here was David Thompson, a man who found joy in the mundane, and it made Vex question everything he thought he knew. "So what do you do when you're not trying to kill people?" David asked playfully. Well, Vex hesitated, unsure how to answer without revealing too much about himself. "I travel a lot." "Traveling sounds nice. Where have you been?" Luna asked eagerly. "Everywhere," Vex replied vaguely. "You wouldn't believe some of the places I've seen." "Like where?" David pressed on. Vex contemplated his response carefully, revealing too much could lead to complications he wasn't prepared for. "Let's just say I've visited some interesting planets, some with unusual customs." "Like what?" Luna asked again, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Well," Vex began slowly, "there's this one planet where everyone communicates through interpretive dance. It's quite fascinating but also very confusing when you're trying to negotiate a contract." David laughed heartily at that image while Luna giggled uncontrollably. The atmosphere around the table shifted again, this time filled with genuine laughter rather than tension or fear. As they continued their meal, Vex found himself relaxing more than he ever thought possible in such circumstances. He watched David interact with Luna, the way he encouraged her creativity while gently correcting her when she went too far off track, and felt an unexpected pang of longing for something he had never allowed himself to desire: connection. "So what happens now?" David asked after they finished eating and Luna rushed off to grab dessert, her latest culinary experiment involving chocolate-covered strawberries. What do you mean? Vex replied cautiously. Well, David continued casually as if discussing the weather rather than his impending demise, you came here intending to kill me. But now we've shared a meal together and talked about life and stuff, so what happens next? Vex felt a knot tighten in his stomach as reality crashed back down around him like a tidal wave. He was still here on assignment, he still had a job to do, but this evening had blurred those lines beyond recognition. I suppose I should finish what I started, Vex said slowly, feeling the weight of those words settle heavily upon him. David nodded solemnly but then offered a reassuring smile that caught Vex off guard. Look, if you're going to kill me, if that's really what you want, can we at least make it interesting? You know how boring it is just sitting around waiting for someone else to decide your fate. What do you mean? Vex asked warily. How about we turn this into some sort of game? You can try your best to eliminate me in whatever creative way you want, but I get to defend myself however I see fit. Vex blinked in disbelief at David's suggestion. It was utterly ridiculous yet strangely appealing at the same time. Here was this ordinary man proposing an elaborate game of cat and mouse rather than cowering in fear or begging for mercy. Are you serious? Vex asked incredulously. Absolutely. David replied enthusiastically while Luna returned with her dessert triumphantly balancing chocolate-covered strawberries on her little plate like trophies from battle. I'm not sure if this is brilliant or insane, Vex muttered under his breath while watching them both beam with excitement over their culinary creation. It'll be fun. Luna exclaimed as she took her seat again at the table beside her dad while offering one of the strawberries towards him eagerly. As Vex accepted it hesitantly, wondering if perhaps this would be his last taste of food before fulfilling his mission, the weight on his shoulders began to shift ever so slightly. Maybe there was more at stake here than just one man's life after all. The dinner conversation. The chaotic scene in the kitchen was a stark contrast to the life Vex Starlight had led for centuries. As he sat at the table, a plate piled high with spaghetti and meatballs in front of him, he felt an odd mix of emotions swirling within him. Here was David Thompson, a man who was supposed to be his target, yet instead of fear or desperation, David exuded warmth and humor. Vex couldn't help but be drawn into the atmosphere of this unexpected dinner. Do you always invite your assassins over for dinner? Vex asked, attempting to maintain some semblance of his usual bravado. Only the interesting ones, David replied with a wink, pouring himself a glass of red wine. And you've certainly made an impression. Vex raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Interesting. I suppose that's one way to describe my line of work. Luna, sitting across from him with her pigtails bouncing as she leaned forward eagerly, chimed in, so what's your favorite way to eliminate someone? Do you have a favorite weapon? Luna. David interjected, clearly trying to steer the conversation away from such morbid topics at dinner. Let's not ask our guest about his job while we're eating. No, it's fine, Vex said, surprising even himself with his willingness to engage. It's a valid question. I've used many methods over the years, poisons, traps, even psychological manipulation. He paused for effect. But I have to say, there's something satisfying about a well-executed plan. David chuckled as he took a sip of his wine. I can only imagine. But you know, it's not all about the execution. Sometimes it's about the story behind it, the why more than the how. Vex considered this for a moment. In his line of work, he often focused solely on the mechanics of elimination without considering the narratives surrounding his targets. You think there's a story behind every target? Absolutely. David exclaimed, animated by the conversation. Every person has their own journey, their own reasons for being where they are today. Even you. He gestured towards Vex with genuine curiosity. What led you to become an assassin? Vex hesitated, this was territory he rarely explored. Most people saw him as a cold-blooded killer rather than someone with a history or motivations beyond their immediate perception. It's complicated, he finally said. Complicated is good. Luna piped up, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Tell us. Vex took a deep breath and began to weave a tale that felt foreign yet oddly liberating. I grew up in a world where survival meant power and influence. I was trained from a young age to take on missions that would elevate my status and ensure my safety in a galaxy filled with danger. He paused again, searching for the right words. Over time, I became known as one of the best, an elite assassin, but it came at a price. What kind of price? David asked softly. The loss of connection, Vex admitted, feeling an unexpected weight on his chest as he spoke. I lost friends and family along the way, people who mattered to me because I was so focused on my work that I didn't allow myself to care about anything else. David nodded empathetically while Luna listened intently, her youthful innocence juxtaposed against Vex's hardened past. That sounds lonely, Luna said quietly. It is, Vex replied, surprised by her insight. He hadn't expected such depth from someone so young. But you're here now. David interjected cheerfully, trying to lighten the mood again. And you're having dinner with us. That's something. Yes, Vex agreed slowly, still grappling with how much this evening had shifted his perspective. It is something, unusual. Unusual is good. Luna declared with enthusiasm before taking another bite of her experimental meatball. I'll admit, Vex continued cautiously, this isn't what I expected when I accepted this contract. What did you expect? David asked curiously. I expected, well, Vex hesitated again before deciding to be honest about his assumptions. I thought I'd find fear or desperation, something that would justify my actions. David leaned back in his chair thoughtfully before responding. Fear can be paralyzing, it can make people act irrationally. He glanced at Luna and then back at Vex. But sometimes kindness can break through that fear, create connections where there were none before. Vex felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through him at David's words, a flicker of hope that perhaps there was more to life than just killing. So what do you do now? Luna asked suddenly, breaking through Vex's contemplative silence. What do you mean? Vex replied. Well, she said earnestly, if you're not just going to kill my dad after dinner, what happens next? The question hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. Vex had come here with one intention, to eliminate David Thompson, but now he found himself questioning everything about that mission. I suppose I could leave, he said slowly, weighing each word carefully as if they were fragile glass ornaments hanging in the balance. But then what would that accomplish? Maybe you could stay, David suggested cautiously but with an edge of hopefulness in his voice. Get to know us better. You might find that life outside your line of work isn't so bad. Stay. Vex echoed incredulously. Yeah. Luna jumped in again excitedly. You could help me with my science projects. Or we could play games. We could even teach you how to make spaghetti. Vex chuckled lightly at her enthusiasm but still felt conflicted inside. He had spent so long distancing himself from connections that this sudden offer felt overwhelming. I'm not sure if I'm cut out for normal life, he replied honestly. Normal is overrated. David said with a smile that radiated warmth and sincerity, the kind that made even someone like Vex feel welcomed despite his dark past. As they continued their conversation over dinner, discussing everything from Luna's school projects to David's attempts at cooking, Vex found himself relaxing more than he ever thought possible around anyone else outside his profession. For once in centuries, he felt like he could breathe freely without the weight of expectation pressing down on him, a sensation both exhilarating and terrifying all at once. So tell me more about your job, David prompted again after finishing another round of garlic bread, this time without any mention of assassination or targets looming overhead. As they delved deeper into discussions filled with laughter and camaraderie, a stark contrast from what should have been an evening marked by tension and fear, Vex realized something profound. Maybe this ordinary human father and his daughter had changed something within him, a spark ignited amidst all those years spent cloaked in shadows, and perhaps it wasn't too late for him after all. A change of heart. As Vex sat at the dinner table, surrounded by the chaotic warmth of the Thompson household, he couldn't help but feel a profound shift within himself. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile environments he was accustomed to. Here, laughter echoed off the walls, and the simple act of sharing a meal felt like an alien experience, one that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "Dig in," David Thompson said cheerfully, serving Vex a plate that could easily feed a small army. "And don't worry about the calories, we'll burn them off with all the laughter." Vex hesitated for a moment, staring at the mountain of spaghetti and meatballs before him. He had come here with one intention, to eliminate this man, but now he found himself caught in a web of unexpected emotions. As he took his first bite, he was struck by how delicious it was. The flavors danced on his tongue, and for the first time in ages, he felt something other than the thrill of danger. "So," David began, leaning back in his chair with an air of casual confidence, "what's your story? How did you end up as one of the galaxy's most feared assassins?" Vex swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. "It's not exactly a bedtime story," he replied cautiously. "Try me," David urged. "I promise I won't be scared." Luna giggled at her father's enthusiasm. "Yeah. Tell us about your coolest kill." With a sigh, Vex realized he had little choice but to indulge them. "I suppose it started when I was very young," he began slowly. "I was trained from an early age in various forms of combat and strategy, taught to see life as a game where only the strongest survive." "Sounds intense," David said, nodding thoughtfully. "It was," Vex continued. "I became known for my efficiency, my ability to eliminate targets without leaving a trace. But over time, it became less about survival and more about reputation." He paused, reflecting on his past. "I lost sight of why I started down this path." David leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "I became so focused on being the best that I forgot what it meant to be human, to connect with others," Vex admitted, feeling an unexpected weight lift from his shoulders as he spoke. Luna's eyes widened with curiosity. "But you're here now. You're having dinner with us." "Yes," Vex replied softly, glancing at David and then back at Luna. "And it's different." "Different is good," Luna exclaimed, her innocence shining through. "You should come over more often." Vex chuckled lightly at her enthusiasm but felt a pang of sadness at the thought of returning to his solitary existence after this evening. The warmth radiating from this little family was intoxicating, a stark contrast to the coldness of his profession. "So what happens next?" David asked, breaking through Vex's reverie. "What do you mean?" Vex replied cautiously. "Well," David continued, "you've spent all week trying to kill me but now we're having dinner together. Do you still plan on going through with it?" The question hung heavily in the air as Vex considered his options. He had come here with every intention of completing his mission, yet now that he was seated at this table, surrounded by laughter and kindness, he found himself questioning everything. "I don't know," Vex finally admitted, surprising even himself with his honesty. "I came here to eliminate you, but I'm not sure I want to anymore." David smiled warmly as if sensing Vex's internal struggle. "That's understandable. It's hard to reconcile who you are with what you do." Vex nodded slowly, David's words resonated deeply within him. For so long, he had defined himself by his profession, a title that brought fear and respect but little else. Now he found himself yearning for something more meaningful. "Maybe you could stay for a while," Luna suggested eagerly. "You could help me with my science projects. Or we could play games. We could even teach you how to make spaghetti." The offer hung in the air like an unspoken challenge, a chance for Vex to step outside the confines of his past and explore a new path altogether. I don't know if I can do that," Vex replied hesitantly. Why not? David pressed gently. You've already taken the first step by being here tonight. Vex felt a flicker of hope ignite within him as he contemplated their offer. Perhaps this ordinary life, filled with laughter and love, was something worth pursuing after all. I suppose I could stay for a little while longer, Vex said slowly, feeling an unfamiliar warmth spread through him as he made that decision. Great! Luna squealed with delight as she clapped her hands together excitedly. But what about your job? David asked cautiously. Vex took a deep breath before answering. My job has always been about eliminating targets without question, following orders without considering the consequences. He looked directly into David's eyes, feeling an unexpected connection between them. But maybe it's time for me to rethink what it means to truly live. David nodded appreciatively as if understanding the weight behind those words, the struggle between duty and desire that had haunted Vex for so long. So what do you want to do instead? David asked gently. I want to learn how to live again, Vex replied honestly. To experience life beyond assassination, to find joy in simple things like sharing meals or helping someone succeed. Luna beamed at him while David smiled knowingly, two people who had unknowingly changed everything for him in just one evening. Then let's start right now. David declared enthusiastically as he gestured towards another plate piled high with food waiting on the counter, this time filled with dessert rather than main courses. As they dug into chocolate cake topped with whipped cream and sprinkles, a delightful concoction crafted by Luna herself, Vex felt lighter than he had in centuries. Perhaps this ordinary human father and his daughter had opened up new possibilities within him, a chance for redemption beyond mere survival, and maybe just maybe there was room for him at their table after all. The decision. As Vex sat at the table, surrounded by the remnants of a chaotic dinner, he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The laughter and warmth of the Thompson household enveloped him like a comforting blanket, and for the first time in a long while, he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about his life and his purpose. David Thompson, the man he had been sent to eliminate, was not just an ordinary human, he was a father who cared deeply for his daughter and had created a home filled with love and laughter. Vex couldn't help but admire how David navigated the complexities of life with such grace and humor. As they shared stories over dinner, Vex felt the walls he had built around himself begin to crumble. Do you ever think about what you want outside of your work? David asked, leaning back in his chair with genuine curiosity. I mean, beyond the thrill of being an assassin. Vex paused, contemplating the question. For centuries, he had defined himself by his profession, an elite assassin known for his efficiency and skill. But as he looked around the table at David and Luna, he realized that there was so much more to life than contracts and eliminations. I suppose I've never really thought about it, Vex admitted slowly. I've always been focused on my missions, on being the best. But now, I see what I've been missing. David nodded knowingly. It's easy to get caught up in our own worlds, especially when we're good at what we do. But sometimes, it takes an unexpected encounter to remind us of what truly matters. Luna chimed in enthusiastically, like family. And friends. And food. She beamed at Vex with innocent excitement. Exactly, David said with a smile. Life is about connections, about sharing experiences with those we care about. Vex felt a pang of longing as he considered David's words. He had spent so long isolating himself from others, believing that emotional connections would only lead to pain or distraction. But sitting here, surrounded by warmth and laughter, he began to understand that perhaps vulnerability was not a weakness but a strength. So what happens now? Vex asked quietly, feeling the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Well, David began thoughtfully, you could leave and go back to your life as an assassin. Or you could stay here, for a while at least, and see what it's like to live without the constant pressure of your profession. Vex looked down at his plate, contemplating the implications of such a choice. He had come here with one intention, to eliminate David Thompson, but now he found himself at a crossroads that could change everything. Staying would mean giving up my old life, Vex said slowly, weighing each word carefully. It would mean stepping into something completely unknown. Sometimes the unknown is where we find ourselves, David replied gently. You don't have to make any decisions right away. Just take your time and think about it. Luna leaned forward eagerly, her eyes sparkling with hope. You could help me with my science projects. We could do experiments together. And you can tell me more stories about your adventures. The thought of spending time with Luna, of helping her explore her curiosity, was enticing in ways Vex hadn't anticipated. He had always been drawn to stories, the thrill of adventure, but now he found himself yearning for something deeper, connection. I'll admit, Vex said slowly, the idea of helping you with your project sounds appealing. David grinned widely as if sensing Vex's internal struggle shifting toward acceptance. Then why not give it a shot? You can always return to your old life if you decide this isn't for you. As they finished their meal, Luna excitedly recounting tales of her school adventures while David chimed in with anecdotes from his own childhood, Vex felt a sense of belonging begin to blossom within him. It was foreign yet comforting, an emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in centuries. When dinner concluded, Luna rushed off to grab her latest science project, a model volcano that she had painstakingly crafted over the past few weeks, and returned with it proudly displayed on her small table. Look! It's going to erupt, she exclaimed excitedly as she set it down in front of Vex. Erupt? Vex echoed, raising an eyebrow in amusement. Yes. It's going to explode with baking soda and vinegar. Luna explained enthusiastically as she prepared the ingredients for her experiment. Vex watched as she carefully mixed the components together, her face lighting up with joy as the volcano erupted in a fizzing explosion of foam and color. For that brief moment, all thoughts of assassination faded away, all that mattered was this moment shared between them, a moment filled with laughter and discovery. That's impressive. Vex praised genuinely as Luna beamed at him. See? Science is fun, she declared triumphantly. As they continued experimenting late into the night, building small rockets out of soda bottles and launching them into the air, Vex felt something shift within him once more. He realized that perhaps this was what he had been searching for all along, a chance to connect with others outside the confines of his profession. Later that evening, as they settled down on the couch after hours filled with laughter and experimentation, David turned to Vex with sincerity etched across his face. You know, I'm glad you came over tonight. Me too, Vex replied softly. David smiled warmly before adding, You're welcome here anytime, whether it's for dinner or just to hang out. The invitation hung in the air like an unspoken promise, a chance for Vex to forge new connections and redefine his purpose beyond assassination. As he lay in bed that night, listening to Luna's soft laughter echoing through the walls, he realized that perhaps this ordinary human father and his daughter had changed everything for him in ways he never expected. Maybe there was still hope for redemption, a chance for him to embrace life rather than merely exist within its shadows. With newfound determination brewing within him like an unquenchable fire, Vex drifted off to sleep dreaming not of contracts or eliminations but rather of possibilities waiting just beyond tomorrow.